Whether you are new to cycling or an experienced rider, there are plenty of pitfalls when it comes to your riding position and style.
Now, we all have our own weaknesses when it comes to maintaining an efficient and comfortable position on the bike. But there are some bad habits that creep into our riding style all too easily. So we're going to take a look at a few of them and figure out how we can avoid them happening in the first place.
Starting things off with hunched shoulders, riding round like a cranky goblin who looks like they just got off a 24-hour flight from Australia. It's a common problem, hunching over the handlebars, looking like you're riding in a very uncomfortable position.
Now, it is a riding style that does creep up over time, especially if you're riding lots and the muscles in your upper body tighten over time. You might not even realise that you're hunching. Now, it can lead to excruciating pain in your shoulders and prove to be a limiting factor to your riding. I myself once got such bad pain on my upper back and my shoulders, I couldn't pull the brakes without wincing. But why do we hunch, and what leads us to become a huncher? We've also got the opinion of professional bike fitter and physiotherapist Bryan McCullough to weigh in on the matter.
Thanks for joining us, Brian. Hunch shoulders to start off. What is your take?
So my take on this is it's something that we see a lot of. And you've already discussed about some of the bike fit elements that might cause you to adopt that position on the bike, but conditioning is one of the other big things that will lead to this. So we talk about the muscles around our back and our shoulder blades. We generally call them your posterior chain muscles. If those muscles are not quite strong enough to hold you up against the sort of forces of gravity, our body's going to tend to curl up into a little bit of a more flexed position to try and actually absorb those forces. So posterior chain strength along our back is a really important way to improve our cycling posture. And if we're lacking in that area, we're going to tend to curl up a little bit more in that hunched position. So it's not to say that if you've got a hunch spine, you're in a bad position. You can always work on sort of improving it as best as it can be for you.
And what are your top tips to solve the hunchback? Myself and Manon actually called it the angry goblin look on the bike.
So how do we deal with the angry goblin? Well, first of all, the bike fit is really important because what we need to do is try to see if we can match up the position on the bike to the rider's current flexibility or strength. But the other side to look at is what can we do to improve the rider's strength and resilience themselves? So obviously getting a nice long spine position will improve your ability to breathe well and therefore power the engine when you're cycling. But what we need to do is work on posterior muscle strength. So that's getting things like deadlifts, bent over rows, and sort of some of those bigger, heavier lifts going on. By increasing the strength of those muscles, we'll be able to hold a position for longer, being able to produce power on the bike, but also we'll be able to be more comfortable when we're riding. And we know that when we're more comfortable, we can drive more power into the pedals as well.
One key piece of advice I would give someone if you are a huncher is to try raising your bars. Having your bars too low, we can overcompensate by reaching down further and our upper body doesn't get the right support.
Yeah, if you can raise your bars that little bit, it will help you relax your upper body and avoid you riding in that cranky goblin look. Next up, riding on the drops, or lack of riding on the drops to be precise. Correct use of the drops will enable you to ride in a much more aerodynamic position, save you energy, and give yourself a much more powerful position when sprinting. But the thing is, many of us get lazy and ride on the hoods. Don't use the drops as much as we should. Even Fabio Cancellara used to sprint on the hoods.
It didn't stop him from winning though, did it, Conor? I remember getting told off by my old team managers for always riding on the tops. If you are a serial offender for always riding on the tops, then why not try and factor in some longer stints on the drops on your rides? It'll benefit you in the long run and help you get away from that lazy top position.
Next on the list of our bad habits agenda, flicking the knee out whilst pedalling.
It's a bad habit we often see from pros all the way down to beginner riders. It often happens right at the top of the pedal stroke at 12 o'clock, where the knee just flicks out slightly. It can also be seen in the ankle with unstable movement on each pedal stroke.
But why do we flick our knee out whilst we pedal? And isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Much like everything else in cycling, there's lots of different reasons why riders will do this. Probably the most common is if a rider is unstable on the saddle, okay? When a rider is unstable on the saddle, you'll see all sorts of additional movements, and that's the body trying to combat this instability to try and resolve and stay stable to produce power. So if the saddle's too high, we'll find the pelvis will shift from side to side, and the legs will therefore move in and out as they try and combat that movement that's happening. The other side to look at if we go outside of bike fit is also the stability at the shoe and the pedal interface. So if you can imagine, if we stand on an uneven or an unsteady or a soft surface, our knee's going to wobble around a lot as we bend our knee. So if we can improve the stability at the foot pedal interface, we're going to end up having a much steadier leg to push through. From the top down, we look at the strength around the hip. So muscle strength conditioning around the hip, in particular the glute muscles, which control the rotation of the actual leg as you push down, is really, really important. So we would focus on strength from that perspective, stability of the foot pedal interface from the foot, and then finally making sure that you've got your saddle height absolutely nailed so the pelvis is nice and stable.
Now moving on to probably one of the most common bad habit riding styles, the wrong saddle height. Can't even touch the pedals on this bike.
Saddle too high and you can increase muscle tightness and also increase the pressure you feel on the saddle, which is something that may lead to an increased risk of saddle sores. Now you'll also experience a loss of power at the bottom of the pedal stroke.
Saddle too low, on the other hand, you may experience some knee pain, and it will reduce your ability to put the power down whilst in the saddle, and it can shorten your hamstrings too.
No one is the same and everyone rides with slightly different techniques. So don't assume just because you've seen someone ride with a super high saddle height that you should do the same. You may end up compensating for a high saddle height by overextending your knee or foot angle. Now, as a guide, if you want to try to find the right saddle height, look for a saddle knee angle of between 140 and 145 degrees. You could take a side-on shot and work this out for yourself by analysing your position.
However, you also need to consider your foot angle, which should be around 10 to 20 degrees. When the going really gets tough, all your form can go out the window. You'll start moving your body all around and do anything you can to keep those pedals turning. Some riders, though, look solid as a rock on the bike.
Moving around on the bike is a definite bad habit we allow to creep into our riding when the going gets tough and our concentration lapses.
But at the moment of extreme fatigue, it feels like any sort of movement is going to propel us forward. But is this a good idea when the going gets tough?
When it comes to moving on the bike, other than your legs producing power, the real problem here for most people is comfort. And I think a lot of cyclists are afraid to admit it because cycling has a very storied relationship with pain and suffering. But if we get confused about where the pain and suffering should be coming from, we might not realize that the solution or where the problem is coming from. So in a lot of cases, saddle comfort is what's causing people to shift and move around to try and find. It's just your body searching for a solution to a better position. So that's number one. The other is just your pressure and weight distribution on the bike as well. So if we've got too much pressure forward on the bike on our hands, you'll find that we keep moving our hands around. But if we've got too much pressure on the saddle or the saddle's not in the right position, we'll be shifting around looking for the right position to get comfortable.
Okay, last bad habit for the position police to critique. Sitting wonky on the saddle. Now, hands up, I am quite a big offender when it comes to this one, and it can be hard to know you're actually doing it. The only way to really tell is to get someone to ride behind you, take a look at your position, and then afterwards tell you this.
Connor, you do know you sit wonky on the saddle?
Wonky, do I?
Yeah.
Really?
I know, yeah.
Oh, no.
This is the worst way to crack someone when on a ride, so if you are going to inform them about their wonkiness, be gentle on them.
Thanks for telling me though, Manon.
It's all right, I thought you should know.
Yeah.
Now, there are a whole host of different reasons why you might be sitting wonky on the saddle. It could be different leg lengths or the wrong cleat setup.
Now, the reason I was actually sitting wonkily on the saddle was because my glutes weren't firing correctly and I was relying on my hamstrings a little too much. After some activation exercises, such as glute bridges, I managed to solve the problem, but it did take quite a lot of hard work off the bike.
The number one reason we'll see people sitting either off center or sort of wonkily, as you put it, on a saddle is generally saddle height. And in this case, most often than not, it's the saddle height that's a little bit too high. Once the saddle is too high, it causes a difficulty in one leg reaching the bottom of the pedal stroke. And we've got to have the pelvis shifting from side to side to reach that. If we combine that with a possible leg length discrepancy, and we all have slight leg length discrepancies, but if that's slightly larger, we're attaching an asymmetrical human being to a symmetrical bike, and we've suddenly got a slightly too high saddle height, we're going to find that the pelvis has to keep reaching to one side just to get to the bottom of the pedal stroke. And moreover, it may even just shift completely to one side and stay there. So very often saddle height is at the heart of these problems, but then we have to look at the rider's body and look at whether there's leg length discrepancies or muscle strength discrepancies. So riders will also tend to gravitate towards their stronger side. So they'll shift their weight a little bit more towards their right side, for example, because they know they can push more efficiently through that side. So you may see them shifting to try and push through their stronger side as well.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So my right side is definitely stronger than I think.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Bryan, thanks very much for all your information. It's been a really big help to us, and it's been great to hear such valuable insights. So thank you very much.
No problem. Happy to join you, Conor, and good luck.
Okay, so those are some bad habits to avoid out on the bike in the new year.
But did we miss any? If we did, please leave them in the comment section below. And whilst you're down there, give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Stop wobbling. Stop hunching the shoulders as well.
You look like an angry goblin.
I beg your pardon. How rude.